Hi, this is the Social Gelo with Angelo show. My name's Angelo. I'm a social scientist, surfer, martial artist, and a whole lot of other things. Coming to you live from Kasai City, Japan, the Social Gelo with Angelo show.
What's up? And welcome to Social Gelo with Angelo. I'm here with Anthony Miele, our resident lawyer and legal advisor. As you saw in the title of this podcast, what was the title of this podcast? Well, in work in progress, possibly what to do after you've defended yourself. What do you do after you've defended yourself? And I'm being very specific on the wording here, because I've done another podcast about when is it legal to strike first. Unfortunately, I used a thumbnail of Will Smith slapping Chris Rock, and then everyone just totally got sidetracked because that was the hot button. And I don't think anybody really watched the video. They were just sitting there arguing about what the Will Smith thing. I'm like, fuck, like I fucked up on the thumbnail. But it's a good video. It has nothing to do with Will Smith and Chris Rock. I think it's only mentioned like 2 seconds in the video. And it was a long video about when is it legal to defend yourself. You could probably check it out here. And if I forgot to put the link, I normally do remember, but if I did forget to put the link, just go into my podcast, type in when's it legal to strike first, and it'll come up in the search. But yeah, so Anthony came in, was gracious enough to come in to talk about that topic then, but no one really talks about, well, what happens after? It's said and done. It's said and done. You've already defended yourself. You were in a situation, and obviously the police, or maybe the police aren't involved, maybe ran away, whatever. Whatever the circumstances may be, you've already finished, from your point of view, defending yourself against someone who attacked you. What comes next? So I'm just going to start with that. What comes next?
Yeah. So I guess, well, let's assume you're at a bar and some guy starts some stuff with you, and then you start responding, defending yourself, and immediately you're kicked out of the bar. And there's 6 other guys, and maybe it's just you and your friend. Now you're outside the bar. Because you wanted to be careful and you didn't want to drive drunk, you took an Uber. So now you're stuck outside this bar waiting 20 minutes for an Uber to show up. And the guys come after you. And now you're defending yourself. So you do what you have to do. You defend yourself. And now the police come. What do you do? So I think the instinct is going to be, this is what happened. There's no way I can look bad in this. There's 6 guys. They came after me first, and just start telling the police officer stuff. And everybody that I know, I'm not a criminal defense lawyer. It's not my specialty, but all of my colleagues that are criminal defense lawyers, they all say, don't say anything. Don't talk to the police. Be polite. Don't talk about your day. Don't talk about anything. Don't say you didn't do anything. Don't say you did do something. Don't say you were defending yourself. Don't say it was self-defense. Don't get into anything, and just say, I just want to talk to my lawyer. If they want to search your vehicle, if you have a vehicle, in this situation you don't, say, I do not give consent to search the vehicle.
What if they want to search you, like they want to pat you down?
I would say I don't give consent. And you always let them do, if they insist that they're going to do something, you let them, but you let them know that they don't have consent. And then in the process, now it's clear. And, and of course, if they have cameras and they're videotaping with audio, then it'll be recorded that you said, I do not give consent. Be very careful that you specify the whole sentence. I do not give consent for you to search me. I do not give consent for you to search my vehicle, for you to enter my vehicle. Say the whole sentence. Don't just say yes or no. Because there have been cases where the police will be like, do you mind if I, or they'll say it in a way that it seems like no is the right answer. And then really no means the opposite. Do you mind if I search your vehicle? Or do you mind if I search you? And you're like, no. And then so you want to make sure you specify very clearly. And then and ask for your lawyer. Say, I need my lawyer. And that's your right. And then if they and if they you feel like you're not sure if you're being detained, ask them. And if you're not being detained, leave.
And then this is kind of a weird area because I've had issues with police officers where I could have used more legalese to get out of a situation, but I was in a situation where I knew that it could easily escalate and I would be in a lot of trouble, like a lot of fucking trouble. So it was easier to just kind of not legally, I'm still being very careful with my words while speaking to the police officer, but at the same time, I'm trying to just calm the police officer down so that I can get going, so that I can go. So like I said, and this is where I'm stepping in, because I've said this before, and you know this. I grew up in the hood, so I've been pulled over many times. I've had guns pulled on. I've had guns pulled on me by gang members and cops. Both the good guys and the bad guys have pulled guns on me. So in these kind of situations, and my friends weren't always the best of greatest of character. I mean, I'd be around people that weren't the best people. So there was a lot of situations growing up where, yes, I could use legalese, and I knew. It's funny, like this is something that came up when I was studying sociology. My sociology professor would always say, after we all get our degrees in sociology, we're going to move on. We're going to pass the bar exam. We're all going to become lawyers. Because that was the joke amongst the sociologists. Because if you look at what sociologists study and what lawyers study, a lot of lawyers studied sociology before they became lawyers. Because it's a lot. You're studying a lot about law, especially a lot of these people were social justice people. So they're consistently dealing with protests and consistently dealing with law enforcement. How do you do a protest correctly? You're going to end up butting heads with law enforcement. How do you avoid having problems with law enforcement? Sometimes you're a social worker and you're literally working with a criminal. You're literally working with a criminal to help them better their lives because they're an ex-con. So a lot of social work and stuff happens in sociology. So I ended up in this circle of a master's course. It was a master's course. They were all master's students, and a lot of them were studying for the bar as well. And one of the things that always came up was what you just said. Do not talk to the police. There's never, one of them's argument was there's never a good reason to talk to the police, because when they say everything you say can be used against you in a court of law, the that's not even a double-edged sword. It is a single-edged sword. It is not a double-edged sword. That sword,
nothing you can say can help you. It can only hurt you.
Yeah, it could only hurt. A double-edged sword would mean, okay, maybe I can say something and it'll work in my favor. It won't just hurt me. But it's a single-edged sword, because even if the police officer likes you, and they want to help you, and they want to testify on your behalf, whatever they say, the defense attorney can say is hearsay. No, the prosecuting attorney. So if you're being prosecuted by the district attorney, right? You're under prosecution for some crime that you may or may have not committed. Well, if the police officer decides to testify on your behalf, in other words, let's say
if they're testifying as to what they saw, then they can testify as to that. If they're testifying as to what you said and you're the defendant, they can testify as to that because you're in the courtroom and you're the defendant.
Yeah.
So it's technically not hearsay.
Well, what they were saying though is if the police officer tries to testify for you, because the prosecutor gets to handpick their people, they'll simply either not bring them in, or if you try to say, they'll simply not bring that police officer in. And then if you try to bring the police, if your lawyer tries to bring the police officer in, they can block that. And then if the police officer writes a letter or something, they can still say it's hearsay. But on the flip side of it, they can grab that same police officer and make him testify and say whatever they saw and nitpick whatever they said to use it against you. Anyway, so there's really, they're trying to explain to us that there's really no way it's going to help you at all. Even if you think,
I agree with that.
Even if you think the police officer, even if the police officer is on your side,
you could still present, whatever story or facts you need to present later through your lawyer.
Yeah.
And I think there's some layers to that. I think well, one thing, there's a little bit of context which I think is really interesting with this, and I want to tell you a little bit about this. So when police officers are members of unions, and these unions very overwhelmingly negotiate to have clauses in their agreements, and they require that the police don't have to talk for a while if they get in trouble. So if a police officer gets in trouble, someone's hurt, someone's killed, the situation of Breonna Taylor where they broke into her apartment and then they shot her and killed her, those police officers didn't have to talk to any authorities for a while. And then once they did have to talk to the authorities, they did it in the presence of counsel, and that's right in their agreement. Meanwhile, police officers are trained to convince people that are in trouble when they encounter them to get them to talk right away. Right? Even though they have a right to not incriminate, not say things against themselves, they have a right to not talk at all. Police are trained to get you to talk right away. So there's a reason why the police have this right, and we all have the same right. But and of course we don't have to talk to the police, but we don't know that when we encounter a problem, and now something's happened, something's bad happened, we hurt somebody because we were defending ourselves, and now the police come at us, and then we're faced with a tough situation where we have to decide, if I talk, maybe they'll just let me go home. So assume that's the case. If you explain what happened, they'll just let you go. Right?
Well,
assume that's the case. But if it doesn't happen, this is important. So, but if it doesn't happen and you say something that can hurt you, or if they come back later, even though they let you go, and then they use that information against you, you can end up really, really hurting your case. But if you don't say anything, there might be a risk that they'll arrest you right then. But that might be better for you, because even though because that's what they're going to try to do. They're going to try to say, well, if you talk to us, maybe we'll just let you go. And that's the leverage that they use to get you to talk. And you're like, no, I didn't do anything. I was defending myself. I was in fear for my life, blah, blah, blah. And now all of a sudden you're saying all this stuff, and now they have part of their case proven because you just admitted to it. So you're better off saying, I can't talk to you. I got to talk to my lawyer. I'm really shaken up right now. I'm not in a position where I can talk to you. I invoke whatever rights I have to not incriminate myself. You don't have to get legalistic about it. You could just say, I don't believe I have to talk about anything right now, and I need I have to wait until I have my lawyer, and I might be detained right now. If not, I'd like to go. And then if it looks like they want to search you, you could say, you don't have any permission to search me. If they want to search your vehicle, you don't have any permission to search my vehicle. And then let the cards fall where they may. If they arrest you, they arrest you. And then you can, go deal with it later. And then if you get arrested, don't talk to anybody in the jail cell. Don't talk to anybody, because things are recorded. The person you're talking to, they go talk to that person. So that's the advice. But what's interesting with the situation where if you do talk and you say anything, even if you just say what time it is, now you said something, and then the police officer might not remember it the same way you do. So they might say, oh, this is what the person said, or they might lie. And you can't, now that you talk to them, now it's your word against theirs. So there's so many kind of ways you can get yourself in trouble.
And everything you say can be considered hearsay. That was the other one. Everything you say can be considered hearsay. Like, you can say you said whatever you said, but in court, the lawyer can say that's hearsay because you said, again, your word against them. So there's no concrete evidence to say that you said what you said. Like you just said, like, if that makes any sense. Like,
you probably won't even testify if it's a proceeding against you and a defendant, you probably won't testify at all in court.
Yeah.
But there are situations where you could testify, and if it's a self-defense situation, it might be necessary, or there might be another witness that can testify on your behalf that saw what happened. But the thing it's just that there's very little that you can do to help you in that moment. And also you could say something and it's something in your favor, but you didn't say it the right way. like in some states, if it's self-defense, you have to say, I was in fear for my, they have to say it like a certain way. I was in fear for my life or bodily harm. And if you don't say it the right way, then you don't establish that element that's necessary for self-defense. You could say something that's very similar to that, and then the courts can say, well, you didn't say it the right way, and therefore, you can't say it was self-defense. So there's so many ways you can trip up and get in trouble.
And I remember like, so some anecdotal evidence. When I was younger, and I was a teenager, but again, and this goes back to what years later, when I took that sociology course. The sociology course is one of the things that they all said. They said, if you grow up in the hood, you'd be surprised how many people that quote unquote are street that know more about the law than your average person that's from a nice neighborhood, because of the fact that they have to deal with law enforcement every day. Every day they gotta deal with law enforcement. They're right there. Shit's constantly going on. You're constantly talking to a cop for one reason or another. You just be walking down the street, a cop will just pull up to you. Hey, did you see what happened earlier? It's like every day you go through these legal circumstances, and it just becomes a part of your life. So so a lot of people from where I came from, they knew this. It was just a fact of life. It was, you're going to talk to a cop, they most likely are not going to be your friend. And then you have this, it is a double-edged sword on your end, because maybe you want to help your neighborhood. Maybe you want to testify. Maybe you want to help. Maybe you want to give the police officers information to catch someone bad. Unfortunately, those bad people also live in your neighborhood. And if they find out you're some sort of informant, or they think you're an informant or some sort of snitch, you're in a lot of fucking trouble. So like, it was still easier not to say anything. You'd be like, I didn't see anything. And just keep to yourself and just keep walking. Now, the anecdotal evidence was one time when I was a teen, I almost got in a fight with this kid at a it's gonna age myself here, at a skating rink. They used to have these things called skating rinks. You wore roller skates and you went in a circle and they played music by a DJ. So yeah,
that was big when I was a kid.
It has, couples only, So like, either way. So we're at a skating rink. I'm a teen. I'm in my junior high-ish, but we might look at this situation and be like, oh, he was a kid. So no, in my neighborhood, they were arresting kids. This was not the cops. If the cops showed up, you're fucked. They're not going to sit there and be like, oh, some kids were tussling or some kids were arguing. They're going to grab you both and they're going to arrest you, because that's just, and especially if they think you're somehow, there was another law in my neighborhood that said that if you were gang affiliated, when the police show up, they are obligated to book you. Because it was, they had a rule that no more than 3 quote unquote gang members can be, and it was to avoid people being jumped, because a lot of people are being jumped. So by like 10, I remember growing up seeing like 10, 15 guys beating the fuck out of a guy with chains and baseball bats. So like, to avoid these kind of situations, they made a new law in my neighborhood that said no more than 3 known affiliated gang members can be together. Now here's the problem. They don't know who an affiliated gang member is. It ended up being just a bunch of not white people. You better dress well. Like, I learned really quick, don't wear hoodies, don't wear sports paraphernalia, don't wear anything that even looks like anything that the gang members are wearing.
Hats and hoodies.
Hoodies, colors, pretty much no sports. I grew up not wearing any type of sports paraphernalia, like no sports teams, because the gang members were always like some sort of football team fan. So take that out of your repertoire right off the bat. But even then, if they see people tussling, they're gonna think it's gang affiliated. You're gonna be arrested. So like, the anecdotal story is I ended up almost getting in a tussle with this other kid. I'm Puerto Rican. He's black. We end up getting in a fight. It's not racial, but when the police show up, they're gonna see a black kid and a Puerto Rican. That's what that's the story. That's what's gonna happen.
Yeah.
And there was this kind of racial thing going on where I'm brown. So a lot of the Latinos started kind of circling up, and a lot of the black kids started circling up. And they all started kind of circling up, and kind of this segregation thing started happening when me and this guy start our confrontation.
So the optics were very concerning to the police.
So the police weren't there yet, but there was a security guard there, and they started asking us to go outside. And the police we started a cop car coming up, and we never even got in the fight. He just wanted to start a fight. over. He threw some food or a drink at one of the white girls that we were hanging out with, and and I know this sounds very racial, doesn't it? But he did, and it had nothing to do with race. It's just that's just what happened. Shit, I'm just telling you what they look like.
If you want to identify one
and
white
look,
girl out of
and
the
he
several
threw
people that aren't,
and he threw
it's
the
easy
drink.
to.
He threw the drink at her honestly because he had a thing for her. He was trying to get her attention, and there's stupid kids do stupid shit. So like he was trying to get her attention. It didn't work out the way he wanted. He called her a bitch. Things escalated. I stepped in and said, y'all need to calm down. We're here to have a good time. And he's like, fuck you, punk. We'll go right now. And I was sitting down at the time, and I started taking off my roller skates because like I see where this is going. So I start taking off my roller skates, and then I stand and I'm getting ready to kind of score up with him. And since I'm sitting down and he's like talking while I'm sitting, and when I stood up, I realized I'm a good like 6 inches taller than the kid. And I'm like,
Oh,
oh,
wow.
I'm much bigger than I was sitting down. I thought maybe he was a little bit, he was a little bit not yoked, but he had some muscle. But once I stood up, I was like, oh man, he's way smaller. I'm like, hey man, we really don't need to do this. And he really wanted to fight. And I'm like, you know what, man, everyone's having a good time. I'm like, I turn around to his friends. That's another thing I like to do for de-escalation is I immediately turn around to the friends that might start yelling out, fight, fight, fight. And I looked at his friends like, we don't want to do this, right? Like, I don't want to fight him. This is stupid. Um, you're over this. I turned around to my friend who got the drink thrown in her hair. You're over this, right? You're okay. You don't want anyone fighting, right? And it's just like, no, I don't want anyone fighting over over this. I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, this is stupid. And he said, no, and he still wanted to fight. He's like, no, fuck that. We're gonna go.
Mhm.
And so the security guard kicks us out. So now me and this guy and his friends and my friends are in that situation you just talked about. We're all
Right,
outside
just
now.
kicked out. Yep, you
We
don't have a
got kicked
ride.
out. We're waiting for our parents to get there. And the kid's like,
Yeah.
no, fuck that. We're gonna go. And then his friends start turning around and talking him down. Like he doesn't want to fight you.
Mm.
Why are we gonna do this? And it's like, no, we're gonna go. And then the cops start coming up, like, no, the cops are about to get here right now. Can we just say that we just got in an argument and that we're cool now and that we're friends and no big deal before those cops come up to us right now and
Yeah.
ask what's going to go on? I don't want to get arrested. And he's like, I don't want to get arrested. I'm like, I don't want to get arrested either. So like by the time the cops showed up, they're like, what's going on here? And they're like, nothing. Like, I was trying to around like nothing. There was a little bit of shoving and some like a lot of just chest pumping, but nobody got hit. There was no fight. But the point was that we all came to an agreement before the cops got there that there wasn't an altercation
Mm-hmm.
and that none of us were going to talk. And the cops were like, "Are you sure?" Because we just got, we got a formal complaint from the business owner saying you two were fighting.
Yeah.
We weren't fighting. Were we fighting? No, we weren't fighting. No. I was looking. We put our hands up, and we all just denied. We're like, no. Our parents are coming to pick us up. That's it. We're just waiting to go home. But like, the idea was, we definitely were not going to talk to the cops, and we all knew better than to talk to the cops.
Well, what you're talking about is interesting too, because if there's a real situation, a real serious situation where someone's been hurt, you don't want to talk to the cops. What that means is you also don't want to deny that anything happened either. So, and this is really, really, really interesting because there's so many examples, and I only have a few that I know about. But because if you talk, anything that you say now is something that they can use against you, and of course they can change or misinterpret what you said to them, and then that could be used against you. So so if something did happen and now you're saying that something didn't, and you talk to the police, you might be in legal trouble for that. And the example that I remember hearing, there's actually it's a video I'm going to mention to you, and we can maybe put a link to it, where this lawyer goes through a lot of these things. But Martha Stewart, remember Martha Stewart went to jail? And it had something to do with her doing insider trading, right? And a lot of people think that she went to jail for insider trading because she knew some information and she sold her stock or bought stock, something like that. That's not why she went to jail. The reason why she went to jail is because there's a statute that says if you lie to a federal officer, you're guilty of that crime of lying to a federal officer. So the federal officer came to her and said, did you do insider trading or something like that? And she said, no, I didn't. So she denied it, but that was a lie. So all they had to show was that she lied to them. And then she was immediately guilty of that crime. They didn't have to prove that she did insider trading. They just had to prove that she lied about the fact.
But
that
that's a federal agent, right? Does
right.
that apply to a state agent, right? Because police
Well,
officers are not federal agents.
The point of that is not this. There's so many laws in everywhere that you can't know all the laws. So if you never know, you just don't know. Like anything that you say, you can end up tripping on some law that you don't even realize is there. Or you can end up giving the prosecutor an element that they needed, because all they need to do is prove, like they needed to prove you're at a certain beach in LA, right? And so so the officer comes and says, when you were at this beach an hour ago, did you get into a fight? And you go, no. You just admitted that you were at that beach. An hour ago, somebody was killed at that beach. You don't even know that. But now they placed you there. And that's the one element they need to prove that you just gave them for free. They already had all these other things, like a witness that says there's this guy that looks like this, looks like you, all these other things they need to prove. They already have that. The only thing they needed was to prove that you were there. And you said, no, I didn't get into a fight at the beach when I was there an hour ago. You know what I mean? So there's so many ways that just by saying I didn't do this, or just by talking about your day, or that you end up giving them something that they need, and you don't know what they're looking for. It might not even involve you. It might somebody else committed a crime, or it might be a statute, and it might be that says, like you said about the 3 gang members, like maybe you don't know that there's some technicality, like there's a law about that or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
So it's just really,
and
then once you start talking, you don't know if they're going to change. You don't know if you're going to say that you said something that you didn't say. You don't know if they're going to manipulate you. Like once you start going down that road, it's very, it's problematic.
And what about humanizing yourself? So like the other problem. Once I got I'm going to be very careful about this anecdote. So one time,
talk about Martha Stewart.
Yeah, no, so one time I got into an issue, and we got pulled over, and the police officer really wanted to search my friend's car. I was a passenger in my friend's car, and my friend was kind of like, we were musicians at the time, so like he was like, we just got back from band practice. He's giving him a lot of information. I'm not saying anything. And I'm just telling him, like, you shouldn't say, I told him before the cop got him, you shouldn't say anything. Just tell him we're on our way home and that we're almost home. And please just let us go home. And if there's a ticket you want to write, just write the ticket, and let's just get this over with and go home. And the police officer was asking him a lot of different questions. And my friend was just feeding him what he wanted. And he grew more and more suspicious from the way my friend was answering the questions.
Mm-hmm.
And and then finally, like, the police officer turns around and says, you know what, I think I want you to step out of the car and I want to search your vehicle. And at that point, I hadn't said anything. The only thing I had my hands, they asked us to put our hands on the dashboard, so I had my hands on the dashboard. And they're like, and who are you? I'm like, oh, I'm just, he said we were in a band. I'm like, I'm the singer. We just got done recording. And that's here. It's late, and I'm tired. It's late and I'm tired. That's all I said. And finally, when the police officer said, I want you to step out of the vehicle, I want you to step out of the vehicle, and I'm going to search the car. And my friend was like, I don't think that's necessary. And I said, don't argue with him. And then the cop said, what did you say? I asked my friend not to argue with you. Look, to be honest, I'm really tired, and I just want to go home. My wife is waiting for me, and it's late. I just got married maybe like last week, and that's true. I just got married last week. I'm a week into this marriage, and I really don't want to fuck up my marriage. I don't want my friend fucking up my marriage. I said over some stupid shit. And if there's some sort of ticket that you wanted to write him for speeding or something, can we just get this over with? And he kind of laughed, and he let us off with a warning. He said, your tail lights out. It was one of those things, it was like a tail light out. Your tail lights out. I'm gonna let you off with a warning next time, but just get it fixed, okay? And then he turned around to me and said, and you're married now, you need to stay out of trouble. And I appreciate it. And we left. So like there's a lot of key elements I'm leaving out of this anecdote. There's a lot of key elements I'm leaving out of this anecdote for the reason that he said I need to stay out of trouble and have to do with my friend. But I'm gonna say that in that situation, humanizing myself, I feel is what got me, even though I didn't do anything, and it was my friend.
Yeah.
My friend was the problem. Humanizing myself is what helped me in that situation. Now I'm wondering, was there anything I said there that would have been incriminating?
Well, where'd you get you got married? The location you got? No, I probably not. Probably not. I mean, like if you said I'm tired, or if you said, what, if you're very respectful, if you're like, officer, sir, anything we can do, once he starts asking you questions about your day, then you want to be very respectful and say, I really don't want to talk about my day. I just want to focus on getting out of here. So I think it was very effective. I think that sometimes the exceptions prove the rule. Like you're very focused on, like, I got married, I got to go home. You don't know. I mean, it's possible you can get yourself in trouble. Like they just want to establish you were there. Where'd you get married? The location of, you never know. But that's different than if they show up, somebody's been hurt.
Someone's beat up.
You just defended yourself. you know that happened. You were kind of so now that's different. So there are situations in traffic situations where you could kind of develop a rapport with the officer, and then that could really end up in your favor. So there are layers to that. I think being like the whole thing about searching the car, like you want to be really clear, I don't consent to you searching the car. You didn't say that. Your friend did not say that. So at that point, the officer might have had a case to say that it was implied that he had permission to search the car at that point. And then it might be that neither one of you realized that there was some weed or something in the car. You didn't even put it there. Somebody else did. And neither one of you even realized. You're like, sure, go ahead, search it. And then you don't realize it's there. And that's happened. You know what I mean? Like that's happened to people. So you like, I have nothing to hide. And then, your little sister or whatever.
You did have something to hide. you should have had something to hide.
Right. Or your little sister, your girlfriend, I don't know, your other buddy left something there. Who knows? Or somebody had a weapon. You didn't even, like, what are you doing with this? Like, you just don't know. Or you think you forgot you left something there. Or,
So
yeah,
we're almost to the end here, but one thing that I do want to mention, and it's because this is a shitty part of what you're talking about, and this is my biggest concern. So going back to well, you know me, I love my side quests and side rants. So even though some of my actors are not directly related to self-defense, I think hopefully my viewers were entertained by it. Now, you're in a situation, and what you're saying is don't talk. Oh, I spilled water on myself. Either
is that blood? Is that blood on your shirt?
All right, so
what's on that shirt?
So, the police show up. You defended yourself. You fucked them up pretty bad. Guy's unconscious. Let's say. Best thing you can do is not say anything, like you said. Now, the shitty part is going to jail fucking sucks, man. So like there's no matter what, even though the law says innocent until proven guilty, during the actual booking process and everything else, it's actually the opposite. It's guilty until proven innocent. And when I say that because the second you end up in the jail cell, you're automatically having to pay bail. you're automatically given a sentence, even though there's no fucking judge. There's no fucking judge there, but you're automatically given a sentence. Like you're automatically told, okay, you either pay us, if depending on the crime that they're trying to nail you with and how much injury that person sustained. It might be anywhere between $1,000 bail for something small and all the way up to $1 million if someone got really hurt, right? So
I know it.
So there's your bail set, right?
Yeah.
And then the second problem is, and then we're going to say, or 6 weeks in jail, or until a judge can see you. And during the whole COVID situation, that process got really fucked up because the court system got jammed. They're still behind.
Yeah.
They are still behind. They finally lifted all the COVID shit, and now they got the justice system working. It wasn't working that great before, but it's worked even worse. This mucked up the whole gear works, and I know of people that were dealing with stuff where they were in jail for a good year, waiting to see a judge because they had $1 million bail, right? So what do you do? Like you're in jail for a year. You don't have $1 million to pay for your bail, right?
That's so tragic. And I know I've heard of people like they'll be put in the hole. They might have like a psychological condition, and and they don't have their meds. It's just really scary. It's really, really tough, a tough situation to be in. And I think that's why it's important to think in advance about what you're going to do. Because obviously you're going to be scared, you're going to be worried about those things that you're talking about right now. And you have to decide in advance what you're going to do. If this happens and something really serious happens to somebody, you had a gun, you defended yourself, you killed somebody, or you physically defended yourself, or whatever the case may be. In some way, you kind of have to rehearse. What am I going to do? Don't say anything. Be polite. Saying, I need to see. I need to time. I just want to use my right to not talk and not not under the Fifth Amendment. And I want my lawyer. And and it might be being detained. If not, I'd like to go. And you don't have any consent to search me or search the vehicle, whatever. So once you have that all figured out, but you're very polite. And if they tell you to get out of the car, or they tell you to get on the ground, or they tell you to show your hands, or they tell you, comply. Even if you don't think they legally have the right to do that, at that point, you've already said you don't give them consent, you still comply. So, and then there's a human element, and they'll see that if they care, because you're polite. And they know you're worried. Don't say I'm worried, because then they can be like, oh, that's testimony that you're worried. What are you worried about? But so think about that in advance, because you're right. Because if you don't think about it in advance and you're in a situation, you're like, I was in fear for my life. I was defending myself, blah, 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 blah. And you're like, now you just because you think that's going to help you go home.
Yeah. Because it really, it might
be
I 100% agree with pleading the fifth and staying quiet, but at the same time, going to jail, once you go to jail, it's going to cost you money. Very hard to explain to an employer if you're working for someone. If you're self-employed, and even then it's tough because you're not going to be at work for a while.
Yeah.
And you're looking at a minimum. You're looking at a minimum of 6 weeks, unless you have the money. Unless you have the money, you're looking at a bare minimum of 6 weeks in jail.
Yeah.
To either where they say, okay, you do your 6 weeks, and we know you're not a flight risk, so we're going to let you go. Let's say in the perfect world, you get given a bail that you can't pay. Because I like to say that, because if you get given a bail that you can pay, then okay, you pay the bail, you're back to work. That's a 24-hour process. You can get out in the first day. But most likely, considering the kind of offense we're talking about, it's not going to be that. It's definitely going to be
if you're out of state, they might not even give you bail at all.
Yeah, and then the bails, you don't get that back. You don't get that money back. I don't know. Have you ever heard? I've never heard of any of the people that I totally
I know.
exposed. But all of my friends that have been to jail,
You pay like what, 10%, right?
Yeah,
And then,
out of all my friends that I've ever seen go to jail, and I got a lot of friends that've been in jail. I'm I used to be okay. Look, I live in Japan. I'm a good person now, but and I've always been a good person. But I wasn't always surrounded by the league of undistinguished gentlemen that I've referred to in the past. Those guys, those guys, every single one of those motherfuckers that went to jail, they did not get that money back. Like, yeah, they got cleared of charges. They ended up in these kind of situations,
yeah,
and some of them had the money to pay for it. One of them paid 10 grand, but I never saw that money. Like I said, you pay the percentage, right?
yeah,
And that pretty much, from what I saw, that goes to the bailiff or whatever company. That's a different company altogether. It's
yeah.
bond,
Bond
yeah.
company,
It goes to the
and you
bond
pay like a
company,
percentage
and that's it. And I've heard
because
rumors.
they put up the full amount,
Yeah,
and
they
then
put up the
and
full
you give them
amount.
like 10% or
10%,
something like that.
right? And then they drop the bail. They're like, okay, hey, yeah, you didn't do it. Yeah, you're all cleared. But you already
Mm.
paid for a lawyer. You paid your 10 grand for
Yeah,
the bondsman. You probably paid like 20, 30 grand. You lost, if you're lucky, you did it all in a day, so you got to go back to work, right?
hmm,
If you're not lucky, you dragged out a little bit. Now your work knows, and that's bad. Even if you do get away with it, they all look at you like you're a criminal.
mm,
You get through all that, it's really expensive,
yeah,
and it doesn't seem like like I said, that money, yeah. I heard a rumor that you can counter sue to get it back. Like, hey, since you wrongfully accused me, but that's like, good luck.
yeah,
good
yeah.
good luck.
I don't know if that's
Good
even,
luck.
yeah,
Good luck winning your civil case. And after, is it a civil case? No, good luck winning your criminal case, and then later paying more money. And let's say in a perfect world, because you can sue people, you pay more money to the next
hmm,
lawyer saying, I was wrongfully accused. That costed me $10,000. I want the $30,000 from the other lawyer. I want that money back plus damages. And good luck. Maybe if you're lucky, you win.
yeah.
I've never heard of that. I heard more people just
No,
like, fuck it. I already spent 30 grand. I'm just glad I'm not in prison and I still have my job and my wife is still with me. And as Hackelman says, isn't sucking some other guy's dick while I'm in there. Got to throw a little shout out to Hackelman there, buddy. There you go. I'm lucky none of that shit happened and everything's okay. And most people just bite the bullet.
yeah, no, I get it. Like, I mean, you just got to be really careful, and you don't even know, like, you don't know that the other side, the guys that the guy who attacked you or the group that attacked you, they could be unmarked officers. They could be really connected in that town. It could be a local small town. It could be buddies with the cop. I had a situation when I was in college. I was driving to this bar with a friend of mine. He was in the passenger side. He was my witness. I went to turn into the parking lot, and as I was turning, this woman with a car drove right into my car, like totally, like, just didn't stop and just drove right into my car. And I was driving in the right lane, doing everything I was supposed to, and she had a guy with her, and they got out, and I had my friend call the police, and they were mad that we called the police. And police came, they did a police report, and then when I tried to get the insurance money, tried to do a claim, they said, no, the police report said it was your fault. Turned out that the girl that was driving the car was the daughter of the police chief. so you know what I mean? Like, so you just it's tough, man. I don't know, like, 6 weeks in jail or a couple days in jail, all this money spent. Are you going to be able to say the right thing when someone was hurt? Now, you and I have talked about this many times before. If you think something's going to go down, first of all, don't be there in the first place. Second of all, leave before something happens, right? Take those roller skates off.
Yeah, but we did that podcast already.
Right.
They can watch the other
So
podcast we do beforehand. We're talking
all the
about
reasons,
after you
but now
fucked up. Well, that's really right. We're admitting to
yeah.
something here.
Or
After
maybe you didn't. Maybe it was unexpected.
it
Maybe
was
just defend.
unexpected.
Maybe
I get it.
yeah,
Maybe he was defending himself. But the fact is that you done fucked up. Somewhere along the line. Somewhere along the line. I mean, you might end up in that really, really, really narrow percentage chance that there was zero way out of the situation you were in. But we're almost done. I'm going to end with one more anecdote. Chief Running Mouth, and I mentioned Chief Running Mouth one time before. Chief Running Mouth was a man that came into our dojo, and I remember I
Is that
was
his real name?
No, that's the name we all gave him. that's not his real name.
That's
cool.
awesome.
It would be cool if he would own up to that name and we all could call him that to his face. But we called him Chief Running Mouth. So like the Chief Running Mouth was a parent of one of our students that would watch us train in Kajukenbo, and he had a military background. And one time I always loved training knives, so I always had like throwing knives and ninja stars and daggers in my bag, in my martial arts bag. And one time, Chief Running Mouth saw that I had a throwing knife in my bag. He was like, "Oh wow, you got a throwing knife!" And he's like really excited about all these cool knife techniques that you can do and knife defense. Oh, you guys do that here? It's totally. And he had like a long story, and like 45 minutes later, hearing this guy talk about what you can do with a knife, my instructor was like, "Okay, yeah, we kind of gotta close up shop, you know." The class ended 45 minutes ago. I think we all gotta go. So, and Chief Running Mouth would go to our parties and talk a lot about self-defense and stuff. So Chief Running Mouth came in to teach a self-defense seminar or something, because my instructor probably was like, "If you want to go, if he's going to spend an hour after class talking about it, but let's just give him some mat time and see if we can shut him up." So Chief Running Mouth got given an hour. I wish I was there for that hour because I missed it. And he said, "I'm never having Chief Running Mouth come here again." He grabbed one of the students. We didn't even have mats out, and we were talking about how to defend against a knife, and he dropped one of our female purple belts on her head. She had a giant hematoma, like one of those giant bumps on her head.
Oh, jeez. Yeah.
Dropped. So Chief Running Mouth is no longer welcome to these seminars here. So we all knew that what I'm establishing here is that Chief Running Mouth knew some shit and was a really tough guy. He was a big guy. He was tough, and he loved knives and self-defense. A few months go by. We don't see Chief Running Mouth for a while, and we find out that Chief Running Mouth is in prison. Chief Running Mouth got attacked by 2 gang members in a park with knives. They attacked him with knives. And he always talked about how he was good at knife defense. And I guess he grabbed a brick and threw it at one of the guys that tried to attack him with a knife and killed the guy. Like he threw the brick at his head and it killed him. And then the other guy he maimed with a brick. He grabbed a rock or something. He grabbed the knife. I guess there was a disarm involved and a reverse stabbing involved and a bashing involved with a rock. And Chief Running Mouth, last I heard from story of Chief Running Mouth is he may still be in prison for 2nd-degree manslaughter. They did let him do the whole self-defense plea, so he didn't get 1st-degree manslaughter. He didn't get murder. He's a killer, but he's not by law. He's not considered a murderer. He's considered a 2nd-degree manslaughter. In other words, involuntary manslaughter. It's not something he planned out. Still, I think that's a good.
Maybe he talked. Maybe he said something.
Maybe
that's the thing. I mean, your lawyer after the fact, when everything's calm and your lawyer's looking at all the facts and all the situation, the lawyer can help kind of put together a good way of explaining what happened. But you, after all that adrenaline went through you and you defended yourself, if you say anything, you could make your case so much worse.
And what I want to say is, and I'll tell this to my friend too, because we were talking about another case of a friend of ours, like I said, with the whole $1 million bail situation.
Yeah.
Once someone is dead, the law is going to come after you. If someone dies, the law is coming to come after you. They're going to come after you. We can look, I'm not a lawyer, but I can look at, if I had the data of when someone dies, there's 2 places you need to be. Not there at all. Someone dies, not there at all, completely out of the circle, has nothing to do with it, doesn't know anyone involved with this person here that died. The second place where you have no choice, you're there, but you have nothing to do with it. And don't talk to the cops, really well established, you have nothing to do with that person dying. And the worst place, you are there. There's some involvement, any involvement, because that's all they really need is any involvement. You were there. You were there, and someone else killed someone. You're still in a lot of trouble just being here, and like these two are going at it, and you're over here. You're still in a lot of trouble because when someone dies, people have to do time. That's just how the law works. So people got someone. No one's gonna walk out of that not doing any time in prison. They get paid good money. Those lawyers get paid good money to put people in prison. It's a game for them.
And you know what? You know how felony murder works, right? Felony murder. If you're with somebody that kills somebody, and the prosecutor can establish that you were there together to do something illegal, and that the illegal thing involved a felony, and as a result of that thing you were together to do, someone died, you're guilty of murder. And you were just with them. I knew a kid, there was the program called Offender Aid and Restoration in Virginia, and I was involved with it because you're supposed to meet with these people in jail and then talk to them and give them some positive outlook on life so that when they get out, so they'll eventually get out, they don't do something else to get right back in, because the recidivism was a big problem. And I met this kid who turned 18 in jail, and he was with a guy who killed somebody. And I went to the trial, and the prosecutor got some testimony that somebody overheard one of the people in the group, who's this kid, this other guy, and another person. It wasn't even this kid who said it, said, let's go do a place. And that was the testimony to establish that there was a felony that was going to occur. And then he was in the car, and the other guy got out of the car and went and attacked this guy, shot him, and then the wallet was missing. So that was so this kid went to jail for 52 years. Turned 18 in jail, and got convicted and was in jail for, well, that was his sentence. I don't know if he got out, on probation earlier, but.
So like, again, we are talking about what happens after the fact, and I don't want but I think a good conversation about what happens after the fact is to firmly establish this is the kind of shit that happens after the fact. We already did the podcast about how to avoid the after the fact. And I think this podcast really establishes why that first podcast was so important.
Exactly.
Because after the fact, the damage control you're doing damage control. That's just what you're doing, especially if someone gets killed. Like, we go back to the before the fact is make sure that where you're defending yourself while this is a strong argument for, if you're defending yourself, being able to defend yourself in a way where you can use restraint. This may not always be the case, but in a lot of cases it is. And a lot of people, like you said, with the adrenaline dump, they overestimate it. This is a really strong case.
Yeah.
We're almost done here, but this is a very strong case for understanding joint manipulation and grappling. This is a really strong case for that.
Yeah, it's true.
Case for that, because if all I know how to do is punch someone, I was telling this I already talked about this story on another podcast. It's going to come out probably before this one, but I talked about it. If all I knew was how to do was punch someone, I ended up in this weird situation when I went to the U.S. recently, and some person on a substance was inside of an AM/PM and tried to start a fight with my wife, and I was able to de-escalate the situation. But if she would have gotten violent, if this young girl, 25, get in a fight with my wife, who's middle-aged, I'm middle-aged, she's middle-aged, and she doesn't know how to fight. That's what I'm here for. So like, if all I know how to do is kickboxing, then my repertoire of defense is going to be elbows and knees and punches and kicks, right? If that's all, if that's what my repertoire is, that's what's going to happen during the altercation. But if I know something else, and I do, luckily I do Kajukenbo and I have a big emphasis on Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, then I do have a repertoire, a tool kit to be able to restrain someone that doesn't even involve even leaving a mark on them, right?
Yeah.
So, again, I still have damage control to do, but I have a lot less damage control to do than if I punch that person in the face and their head bounced off the concrete. Yeah. So like, either way, that's my wrap-up point. What's your wrap-up point?
Well, I guess related to that, I get this question a lot where people are like, well, how do you defend yourself in a way that's legal, where you're not, you're not doing too much? And my answer is always, do whatever you can to protect yourself and the people that you care about. And don't say anything. And afterwards, let your lawyer help explain it. because that's all you can do, right? Because you can't, even if you do what's perfectly reasonable, and even if you do what's perfectly right legally, you still can't, there's no guarantee that you're going to be okay legally later, for all the reasons we said, right? Somebody gets hurt, you have to be alive, and you have to have your loved ones and your people you care about around you alive and okay. That's the most important thing. And that's all that's all you can do. But it is true, though, I think related to what you're saying, that the more experience you have and the more you can be calm, you're more likely to de-escalate. You're more likely to not act when you don't have to. You're not gonna overreact. Like, people talk about police officers that don't know how to fight, and they might be more likely to shoot somebody. But if they know how to fight, they know Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and a lot of things like that, they might be more relaxed and more capable of handling the situation without escalating. So, yeah, you can't. There's no perfect formula going in, and coming out of it, it's very messy, and all you could do is just try to be quiet, and then let the time develop, get a good lawyer, and then try to explain it afterwards.
All right. Well, thank you very much to our resident legal advisor, Anthony Miele, for coming out. After an hour podcast is the time that I like to promote my show. That's right. If you couldn't stick around for the first few minutes, fuck you. But if you stuck around for the whole thing, like, subscribe, and share with your friends. I really appreciate that.
And Angelo means that in a good way.
Yeah,
thank you, bro.
Not fuck you for sticking around. Fuck the guys that and girls that only stuck around for the first 1 minute, 2 minute, and then jumped into the comments on not even YouTube, on Facebook, and started arguments with the other people that actually watched the show. So they're saying stuff like, "Did you even watch the show?" Yeah,
absolutely.
Let's clarify. That's who I'm talking about. I should probably stop. Per Anthony's advice, I should probably stop talking right now. So I will catch you all later.
Thanks, bro.
Care.